Howdy, and welcome to Risky Standard, an actual play podcast featuring a rowdy group of best friends telling stories and playing tabletop role-playing games together. You can find the show over on Blue Sky at Risky Standard. I'm your host and GM, Pete Loftus. You can find me on Blue Sky as Chip Enjoyer, or over in the Discord where I run the Crispy Standard channel, where I walk the twisted path of the Flavor Warrior. And today, we're going to jump right back into the action in Part 5 of the Division of Silent Accords, wherein we are playing Scum and Villainy, a science fiction setting for Forged in the Dark games by John LaBeouf Little and Strass Asimovic from Off Guard Games. And to continue telling this space haunted house adventure, I've got with me Dr. Alice Forstall, as played by Malcolm Hall.
Hey, Malcolm Hall. You can find me on Instagram. That's Malcolm Hall, one word, it doesn't feel super safe to be using that platform for much longer, so catch me while you can.
The interstellar soldier of fortune, Argo Cattell, as played by Mitchell Brewster.
Hello, young Mitchie B here. I was out late last night at the West Philadelphia Renaissance Fair, so I'm feeling a little groggy this morning.
A clever jape, my lord.
But excited to be here. You can catch me over on Blue Sky at Magnesium B.
And I've got the Aurelian enforcer, Bracco Kemmler, as played by Timothy Mans.
Great to be here with y'all again. Can't wait to delve deeper into this spooky ship. And if you want to check in with me, why not just go over to Axewater's Bandcamp and listen to the newest release, Horde. You can keep an eye on that space, and hopefully we'll have some music forthcoming for season 2. So we'll see you there, and keep your ears out.
And of course, last but not least, producer extraordinaire Liam Doherty. When last we met, our team of operatives had found their way deeper into the interior of the Aeonian and were awed by its cavernous interior. It was kind of revealed on your initial survey that the bulk of the inside of this derelict hulk was in fact so large that it also housed the wreck of a Concordat flagship, sort of wrecked inside the Aeonian. As you surveyed the interior here, you found a silhouette of a figure kind of slumped over near the pedestal of a statue. And you were able to kind of wake this figure from a kind of stasis. And with belabored breaths, this Concordat Justicar, Pollux, had explained that there was not one, but in fact 2 Concordat expeditions to the Aeonian. This Justiciar of the Reclamation Fleet being the second, sent to retrieve or condemn the apostate paladin that had stolen this wrecked warship, the Cenotaph. Dr. Forstall rendered some battlefield medicine to stabilize this Justiciar. You found his condition to be the result of some kind of infection of the copper-gold cesium ichor we've seen flowing and creeping around this ship. And not wanting to take any chances, you quickly sedated him and looked for a way to close the distance to the aft end of this craft. Argo had managed to reopen a connection to the delinquent model drone, activated its explosive failsafe somewhere inside the Aeonian. This kind of burl, this gnarled accretion growing seemingly both in and outside of the Aeonian. And when this explosion went off, you saw chunks of rubble and stone rip away from this kind of burl, this gnarled accretion growing seemingly both in and outside of the Aeonian. And thick seeping globs of this kind of ichor that we've seen started pouring out from this kind of bulbous wound. And this seems to have spurred on a kind of response from the occupants. In great flocks of strange kind of bird-like manifestations, both familiar and strange, folding into themselves, began sweeping the interior, seemingly looking for whoever would have disturbed the kind of calm within. And so you took off at a sprint, trying to close the distance and avoid detection, running down a long balcony boulevard towards the back end of the Aeonian. And you found your way to a sort of terminal station for a cable car connecting the cityscape panes of the exterior to the central column, although it was missing its cable car. And here there was a sort of makeshift barricade set up, seemingly by your Concordat precursors who may have come the same way, set up at the entrance of a kind of ruined biolab of sorts. Investigating this room, you found kind of an operating theater flanked by kind of vats of glass and strange interfaces. And on the operating slab was the corpse of what looked to be kind of a strange denizen of the void, a kind of space squid of sorts with long tentacles hanging from hooks draping from the ceiling, its center cavity split open. Argo hung back, keeping an eye on the situation, and was able to spot a stalking creature sneaking its way through the detritus, trying to get a jump on Bracco while his back was turned. but you acted more quickly and were able to get a jump on it, loosing a flechette round into its hide, where it kind of sucked and pulled apart into two entities. One peeling off like a flatworm, inching its way up to this strange cadaver and crawled its way into the cavity where this kind of thing lurched to life. But acting quickly, you were able to sever the tentacles from the body of this space squid and quickly sealed off the chest cavity of this thing under durasteel glass. After you'd sealed it off, you noticed the kind of roiling and bubbling of this kind of pool of cesium ichor in the body of this space squid. And what emerged was a sort of silhouette of an imposing figure that you would probably recognize as the shape of a Concordat paladin. And right where we left off, this paladin bust had taken shape and seemed to kind of murmur the words, "You are so close now." Kind of zooming in right there, you're in this ruined biolab, the ceiling again like hanging and draped with these hooks, stuff all over the floor. There's this husk of this sort of metamorph wolf that you'd felled previously. And I think you're kind of standing in the glow of maybe a dim overhead light. And I think, this bust is sort of flowing and dripping, not unlike the echo that we saw in the antechamber, falling back into this pool beneath it. It continues, right? You're so close now, closer to the truth.
I wave my hand in front of its face to see if it is perceptive, right? Am I watching a recording that's speaking to me, or am I, interacting with a thing?
Like, as you move your hand, I think, as you go kind of left to right, these same kind of tendrils dart forward and, are kind of spattered against the glass from the puddle beneath. I think it even looks at you and it beckons.
Open the glass.
Are you the same artifice that we've encountered before?
We have been called by many names, in 1,000 tongues and 1,000 worlds.
Oh yeah, it's the same thing as before. Yeah.
What's the structural stability of this glass looking like? Is this we need to get out of this room right now, or is this does it feel like we have a moment to converse before this thing's gonna break loose again?
I think they're like hairline fractures. If you ran your hand along the outside of the glass, I think it probably is. It seems fairly stable. This is like medical grade, in no immediate danger.
I think we should leave. I think the danger is very clear now. I think that we should continue on with what we're planning to do and get out. Time's of the essence now. Every moment we spend here is another moment for new horrors to reveal themselves. Unending, unfurling like a flower, the horrors.
Okay. Well, this is it. Well, this thing is under glass, and it's on this I guess operating table. Is there any
I bet you could
push
open the glass, get it out.
Yeah, no. See, if we could.
I think we should open the glass and let it out.
I don't know. I was thinking of trying to make it answer questions by threatening it with suffocating it inside this glass, or if there's something you can do to the table to.
I'm going to light up a big stogie and I'm going to blow smoke. We're going to tilt the glass up just a little bit. I'm going to blow smoke underneath it.
Like mezcal.
Yeah, I'm also good to just fucking roll.
Argo would look to Dr. Forstall, looking around the room, looking at this kind of husk of this metamorphic cat wolf thing, this kind of dead tentacled creature under this glass. Dr. Forstall, we need to have an operational theory to understand, to guide us if we're going to continue delving deeper into this. What is happening here? What are we looking at? Is that paladin in control of this, or is it mimicking us again? Is it a copy?
I think that the latter theory is more plausible at this point in time. This is nothing like the Concordat has within their powers. We've tapped into something primordial, something blank, something that is base and vile, and it is looking into our psyche and showing back something profane in order to make us feel like there's no escape, like we're trapped. I don't even remember, I feel like we've been in here for ages. I don't even remember why we came here in the first place.
Argo nods, straightens up his spine a little bit. We are here to board the Aeonian, secure any valuable fundamental tech, and escape before it slips away or crashes into the sun. As an addendum, we are studying the entity here and evaluating its threat to the ring. as our mission, Dr. Forstall?
Well, this is a serious threat. I'm starting to think that perhaps there's nothing of value here. This is a wait. What do they put in front of the
Oh, a place without honor.
This is a place without honor.
No great deeds were done here?
No great deeds are done here.
Argo, does this concern you? Like, what is going through your head when you hear Dr. Forstall say they don't remember how long they've been here?
The recitation of the mission parameters, I think, is not just like a literal it's not just Argo reminding everyone what it is. I think that there is probably a little bit of not manipulation here, but I think Argo has studied psychology in his time, right? Has availed himself of a depth of ring psychological research. I think that there is meant to be a almost guided meditation aspect to this. Repeating the mission parameters is a way of gently nudging everyone back onto the track. Thinking very much here, in the Southern Reach trilogy in Annihilation, there's a lot of command phrases to kind of trigger hypnosis to guide people into danger against their better judgment. I don't think that's exactly what Argo is doing. If that's a spectrum, here's the lowest end of it, right? Something to focus everyone's attention, right? We are here to secure the means of the Aeonian's fundamental propulsion. We are here to evaluate the threat of any entities aboard the Aeonian. And then I think, gestures to the door. And it's
oh, that's right. I remember now. We were headed to the bridge, control room.
We've got to get to that terminal, right? We've got to get the funicular working again.
Yeah, and I think as you guys are kind of working this out in your hypnotic suggestion, the pull in my mind is ferrofluid, when you see a ferrofluid kind of become magnetically charged. And I think that this bust of this paladin becomes like ferrofluid, almost like kind of these wet or rounded spikes, and it's kind of fluctuating, as I think that you feel that same sort of prickling you felt building slowly as you made your way down the boulevard here. And in sort of a thrumming release of this kind of wave of energy, you feel it kind of wash over you. I'm going to tick the clock for the Aeonian stability. As time has elapsed here, this thing, whatever this bust is, observed you now. And there is this search for you based off of the explosion. So I'm going to tick this clock forward. And so that's going to put us at 5 out of 12 steps for the Aeonian stability clock. As a reminder, when that clock hits 12, the Aeonian will have slipped back into the folded space between the beacons, threadspace as we've called it. So that is the time you have to act. With that, I'm also going to add called a 4-step clock here for kind of evading capture. This Ichor has been alerted. There's this kind of wave that goes across the air in the room. You see this kind of bust trickle and fall back into this puddle as, this wave kind of crosses through. And I think, it doesn't knock you off your feet. You can feel it. And I think even more so, you can feel that the Aeonian is sort of lurching into movement. You can definitely hear, the reactor hum, and there's kind of a sense of motion, subtle, but I think you can feel it.
We need to move. And I think Argo would take the lead and start striding out of this room back towards the terminal that we were in previously, which you said has the cabling that is leading to the central column, but no actual
There's no car there, but yeah, there is kind of a terminal. The image in my head is the Roosevelt cable car, sort of, but no cable car. It's just sort of this gate where there's a cable, I think, that runs. As far as you can tell, it doesn't look like there's anything on either end. But I would say when you get out here onto the balcony where this makeshift barricade is, I think looking out now, some time has passed, and since this kind of wave has emanated out, at a glance, I think you would be able to tell that the stream of this ichor that was pouring out of the wound in the burl set off from the explosion has sort of cooled like magma and continued growing, but I think flat, right? And so just as a reminder for the audience, the aft end of the ship, like the back end of a tube, there's the far wall of the Aeonian. There's this kind of gnarled burl growing along probably half of the ship, which you can see on the outside as well. And there's this strange 7-spired basilica in concordat fashion, but not quite, right? Almost sort of organic. And it is around almost like a platform where this cesium has pooled. It looks somewhere between liquid and solid. It's almost like it's spreading out on a plate. It's forming flats, almost like and I think actually you'd probably see this, right? It's not just still like a mirror. I think it is textured. And you'd notice this, I think, based on how close you are now. This accretion disk is cropped up almost like a palatial garden.
This is coming out in front of the basilica.
Mm-hmm. It hasn't quite I would say it's not wide enough to reach to the balcony where you are, but I would say where this cabling is that kind of leads to the center spire, that cable I would say is pretty close to the exterior of this burrow and is probably not a massive distance to the edge of this garden.
Are we gonna have to hand over hand this cable and try to drop down onto it? Or do we think we can get this funicular here by either using the terminal and getting it to work or by physically trying to pull it towards us? Do I need to get Dr. Forstall on my back as we...
Ooh, that could be fun.
Traverse
in?
Yeah.
Is there a control panel or some kind of interface? Maybe the one that we saw previously?
Yeah.
Any kind of, pedestal, anything that looks like it could be used to activate this terminal.
Say this is similar to what you saw inside the lab. There's this kind of interface which looks similar to what you saw in the antechamber, where there's this perfectly smooth kind of sphere of the same stone that the Aeonian appears to be made of, hovering above a pedestal. There was another one similar to this you saw in the lab, some of the fabrication equipment, whatever the other equipment in the lab was. There's definitely one here.
Dr. Forstall?
Well, I suppose I could take a look.
Sure.
Is this going to be an interface role, or...?
Yeah. What is your thought on interfacing here? I would say that this thing does not have the kind of seamed boulder that we saw the Echo kind of emerge from before. This is pretty simple by comparison. Notably, no kind of warding cylinders clicking, no concordat protections put in place. But it's there. What are you thinking to try and interface with it?
So is attune completely out of the question?
No.
Okay, I'm going to attune with it.
Attune would be ways to communicate with non-sentient species of robots, sense unseen danger or killing intent, or safely handle precursor artifacts or remnants.
Okay, so yeah, that sounds about right.
Yes.
And I have Doctor Strange, too.
And you do have Doctor Strange, so that reads your research and fields of study are fringe, esoteric, and focus on the mystical. When you study an artifact or doctor a strange substance, you may ask one, what could this do, or why could this be dangerous? What are you going to do?
I'm going to attune with this.
Okay. So you can attune with this.
I have to study it in order to.
Yeah, I was going to say you can use your Doctor Strange role here to study it first before you.
Yeah,
but you're also welcome to go straight in.
Probably,
up to you.
study it before I start, mind melding with things that I'm
Yeah, that makes sense.
In a scary sort of The Grudge style haunted house that we're in right now.
Open to interpretation, but sure.
That's the movie I'm pulling, at least.
I have not seen The Grudge, so I'm going with you on
It's
it.
very, very scary. 6, baby.
Okay, that's a 6. So you can ask here, right? What could this do, or why could this be dangerous? I'd take another question if you have one thought out.
Can I ask 2 questions on a 6?
What is it, your birthday today?
Yeah. I guess I already know this is dangerous, so what exactly does this do?
Sure. So these kind of interfaces are like a terminal network that was once sort of the central operating system. They serve like kiosks where a kind of avatar would appear.
Oh, okay, so this is the source of these scary guys.
I would say, that in this context, right, this is on a 6, this is, I think you'd be able to discern that this is a more limited node of this kind of terminal system. This would not be the kind of thing that would produce one of these avatars, but to interface with it, you will kind of have to open your mind to this connection in a way that is not necessarily comfortable or natural to you.
All right, so let's do it.
Okay. I'm going to put that at... Well, you do have this clock, so I'm going to say that this is a risky standard condition to start.
So is this clock we're working to complete this to get where we're going, or is this a threat clock?
This is a threat clock. And so I would say even you, Dr. Forstall, I think as you step up to this interface here at the edge of this balcony, kind of next to this gate, and I think what is kind of abundantly clear to you as you look out across this, even as you're stepping up to the sphere, is, those kind of folding and melding like flocks of kind of bird life are kind of sweeping through this interior. And I think you can see them horse, the central spire, come down. And it's like they are plunging downward into this void. And I would say, there's potential that they're going to come rush up at some point here.
All right. Rolling 2d6. 6.
Okay, 6. One of those days for me, huh?
That was risky, right?
Risky, correct.
That means we get a gambit, baby.
Yeah.
Nice.
So on a 6, I think that you step up to this sphere, and I think probably to Bracco and Argo, maybe not really seeing anything in particular here, but to you, Dr. Forstall, I think it's almost like the, kind of edges of this sphere blur a bit, right? And it is like thrumming with the same sort of strange energy. And I think you feel that same feeling we talked about before, your temples sort of pulsing with this connection. And I really liked what you brought up in the first episode where this is like something that Dr. Forstall has maybe always had, but never necessarily thought about it in this way, this call to the beyond. And all of a sudden, right, it like washes over you, whispering, again, kind of coursing through your mind, right? And I think that same refrain that you heard from the paladin's bust, right, like just sort of swirls around you, right? Many names, many tongues, and like rushing and close now, many names, close now, right? Like sort of swirling around you. But this sphere comes to life, and this is probably where it becomes visible to the others here, right? Is like that ichor is present, and I think only in color, right? Like it's probably not the same dripping, copper gold, almost like appears as a 2D surface, like a display. I think above the orb, you can, manipulate it with your hands on there, but it does open itself up to you. What are you trying to accomplish?
You said that there's a closed gate.
I was thinking more like a gate, as in like where like the car would dock, right? So there's kind of like a door frame almost, not necessarily like a closed gate.
Can I shut down the creepy AI sculpture that pops up every once in a while that is possibly trying to kill us?
So for that, I think I would like actually make you roll again, because if you're like you've opened the connection, right? But I think to like actually manipulate some of those systems or turn something on or off that's like built to run as a routine, I think I'd probably classify that as like a hack roll.
I'm not going to go with that. That's probably going to hurt my brain in the long run. Can I access maps, perhaps?
Yeah, you got a 6. I would say like yes, right? And I think that this, cesium-gold like
downloads
display
directly in my brain. I just know where I am and where to go now.
I think like you are able to kind of explore the operating system, interface here. And I think to you can like sort of navigate around here, but it is like preternatural, right? Like it is like imparting into your consciousness. I don't know if you want to note this or something, but I would say like it clicks into place. Like, how a bird can tell where magnetic north is. You sort of realize, you know exactly where you are now. I think you have like rushes of visions. And to be clear, this is not built for a brain like yours. I think it is somewhat overwhelming.
Probably not quite understanding everything that I'm seeing.
Yeah, I think it appears as like fragments of images and, tunnel vision at points. But I think you even get flickers of this sweeping flock's point of view, right? As you get the sense of something looking for you.
Are there any logs?
Oh, yeah.
Has anyone logged anything in?
Oh,
but
certainly.
Running low on food, I can hear raiders in the distance,
Yes, indeed. And I think that, like, this... I think you'd be immediately overwhelmed at how long the history of this place is. And, I don't think a lot of it makes sense that far back. Like, I think...
Yeah, most recent entry.
Yes, so I would say, like, most recent entry, when this was crude, would be, I think, noting, this unusual kind of hull presence, right? Which was, like, that there is something on the hull. At the Aeonian, I mean, I think it's probably, like, in a language you can't speak, right? Like, but it's making sense to you, like, what you're seeing. And it's sort of like there is something that happens transiting the distance of space, some kind of collision. There seems to be nothing wrong. And I think like you flicker forward where there's like an abrasion. This abrasion grows. I think there's concern, right? What you're seeing, I think, is where the origins of this weird burl sort of began. And I think, at points here, this is a very like empathic connection, right? And I think you feel pain, you feel fear, you feel, sort of beyond yourself. And I think you have another distinct sensation of being almost like hit by a wave in the water at the beach, right? Like a gushing forward and this kind of coursing current moving through the pipes of plumbing. You're carried by the water. And at once, I think you feel a great calm and peace. As tepid and cool water stills, I think you feel kind of calm, abundance, purpose. Things I think you probably, the experiencer, would be able to tell that that is sort of the tipping point, right? Where things changed here. I think that you get like another image of it's with your voice, I think, calling out, right? Like an invitation, a beckoning, welcoming. And I think that you feel, again, like this eruption of pain as you get an image of this thing crashing through the outside of this tear on the exterior of the Aeonian.
I pull away like, ha!
I feel like this is like a camera cut from like psychedelic imagery. The music's building. All of this is like rushing through, Forstall's brain, and it's like silence as Bracco and Argo are kind of standing slightly off in the background.
Yeah, you hear like dripping of like an abandoned.
Argo's lit a cigarette, just kind of watching Dr. Forstall like.
Yeah, like
I think
back,
she
like,
comes
murmuring.
back. She was like, "Oh, how long was I gone for?"
Argo, you're the kind of seasoned operative here. Dr. Forstall just before this indicated to you that her memory of this place was slipping. Like, is your hand on your gun at this point? Like, what are you thinking here?
Hand's not on the gun. I'd like to.
Bracco's hand is on his gun.
Yeah, I'd like to note for posterity, Argo has not drawn a gun this entire time on this boat.
That's true.
Not marked on the sheet yet, baby. We'll see where we get. But smoking, watching, and waiting, and has like noted that Bracco has drawn the gun. But I think there's like a kind of a coldness to Argo's demeanor right now, which is like, I'm gonna wait and see what happens to Dr. Forstall. Argo is not panicking.
That makes sense to me. I'm just curious. I'm just putting a little tension on you to see what's going on. I like Argo as a character, so I'm just playing with that. And Bracco, you're there. You're kind of just bracing. You're probably the one who's seen the most active threat here, having a pretty close call with this like metamorph sort of cat wolf thing. But Dr. Forstall does come back. You can shake it off kind of at will on a 6. But yeah, I think your eyes kind of return. I think you feel, that thrumming calm down a bit. But I think that those like whispers, many names, many tongues, like close now, close to the truth, like, are just kind of coursing probably through all of your ears at this point.
Yeah, I think, she's had kind of like a salvia trip moment where, she feels like she's just lived hundreds, perhaps thousands of years of like history of like being a boat.
That's what listening to prog rock is like.
She's been listening to Tool. It's just what listening to Tool is like. Coming to realizing it's probably only been, a few seconds or minutes.
Yeah, I think it's probably been like 30 seconds. But I want to kind of return. You got a 6. You were trying to achieve an action. You got a vision of this sort of map and layout. Was there something you wanted to do on a 6 there?
You can call us a car?
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Is there a tram of some sort? Perhaps a monorail?
On a 6, the thought in my head is that it's sort of like wiggling your toes, right? Like while you're communed with this thing, it's sort of like an extension of your body, almost like a phantom limb. Like you can feel the extremities of this system. I think even from the outside, the cold exterior of space, the wound in your side, almost like a tumor beneath your skin. But you can feel these extremities, and I think you could probably call some sort of car here. Do you want to do that? I'm going to kind of frame this in saying that if you activate some machinery within the system here, you will attract some attention.
I mean, I guess Argo, but before we do anything else, Argo, what happened? What do you know now?
I know a lot. What we're dealing with is even older than the First Era. This is something that the Aeonian came in contact with in deep space.
I think that's astute, right? And like, I guess just to put a bow on that, right, there is the kind of precursor who maybe made these beacons, created this ley line across space for whatever reason.
Praise be to the builder, yes.
But this is something older, something stranger, maybe challenging even your own cosmology.
This was once crewed like any other ship. It came in contact with this, and this is what we're looking at now. It did not always look like this. I also know every inch of the ship now. It's been implanted in my brain.
Okay,
I can see
that's
that.
great.
And I was able to see the ship looking at itself through its own eyes.
Where's the bridge? Where's the command center?
Well, let me show you.
And I think, I described it as like a tumor. This burl, this kind of knot in the superstructure of the ship has, I think, like recombined parts of this, like re-engineered the interior. This basilica, I think, in your assessment of the interior, just sort of burns white hot in your awareness, right? Like the basilica is what was once like a reactor, a sort of central housing, has been absorbed into this like knot and has been extruded and shaped into this basilica.
Can you get us there, Doc? If it's glowing.
Hold on. Let me see if I can get us a ride. Now we're traveling in style. She puts on a pair of sunglasses. Like, let's see if we can get us a ride. We hop into a Camaro.
I think to call this, I'm gonna have you roll to like attune to like
Okay.
move the machinery. This is going to be, I think, a desperate standard roll. You've kind of like woken this, and I would say like I think, honestly, because you got a 6 on that, I'm gonna just say you kind of have a heightened awareness, and in your sort of heightened awareness, I think you can even feel almost like where you can tell there's like a staticky part of a blanket or something, like your hair kind of pulls in a direction. You can feel the tug of this, and you can feel that you can almost feel the eyes searching for you. So desperate standard to attune with this to like call a car. And, I can also give you a devil's bargain. You can push yourself. You could try and set up a support action here.
See if I want to push myself for 1 stress. I still have some wiggle room there. Do I want to do this and save some time at the cost of some stress? I think we need to keep plotting forward. I'm going to mark 1 stress and take an extra d6.
Pushing's 2 stress, right?
I was going to say, I think that's 2
pushing
stress.
is 2 stress. Shoot.
So
Yeah,
I'll give you a
let's do
devil's
it.
bargain here.
No, what the devil's bargain is I push the clock forward.
It'll advance the clock, but
What do you think, fellas?
Let's push the clock forward. Whatever. We can take
Push
out
the
some
clock
birds.
forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I want this turkey shoot to start. Yeah, if you've seen this glowing thing, I think with the time and knowing that we're either going down with the ship or we're going to crash in the sun, get there. And if it takes us out there, I'm going to take the fight to them.
good answer. So I'll give you the devil's bargain on that. So we'll take that from desperate to risky. And I think what is happening here is you kind of like probe outwardly for like where this missing car is. I think you can feel that it's like caught, like almost kind of tangled in some of this filamentous webbing of the cesium stuff. But, I'll give you an extra dice for that. I think you can like through your communion with this interface sort of free it from that without it kind of breaking and snapping.
Yeah, I'm sort of reaching out with invisible hands and pulling it loose.
So go ahead and roll.
Hold on.
That is, and you're taking the stress as well?
No, just the
Okay.
extra die for the devil's bargain. Or I could mark stress for an extra thing and then take the devil's bargain for greater effect.
You could push yourself for greater effect.
I'm going to push myself for greater effect too. So that's just 1 stress or 2 stress?
Still 2 stress, yeah.
Still 2 stress. Okay, I'll push myself for greater effect. So 3d6. What's the effect now? Great?
Yeah, that would be risky great.
Risky great? I'll take it.
Okay, let her rip.
6, baby.
6.
Nice.
Okay.
That is another gambit for us.
So that is a 6. I've advanced the Aeonian stability clock to a 6 out of 12. And I think that this car comes almost down from above you. In keeping in mind that you're on the inside of like a tube, right? Like I think this kind of shuttles down in a system. It maybe kind of takes a moment, but it does arrive in a matter of moments. And, I think even like with a 6 on that, you have a moment of shock, I think, right? Even as this car kind of emerges and it files down this path, kind of gently settling into the gate. And for a moment, I think you're startled as there are a couple of these sentinel phage crawling the outside of it. On the 6, with the preparations you've made, like your communion with this sort of system, they don't even seem to notice you. And I think like as the car settles into this gate, the phage continue shuttle their way down across this cable. But it arrives, and I think it look of like a similar construction methodology to this interior. It's smooth. I think it's I don't even think it's like really connected to this thing. Like I think that there are some kind of floating kind of stone housing there, but it is like levitating, right? Like there's no like gears moving this along. It seems to kind of move of this strange connection. But I think almost like there's no seam, but it opens, right? And so like these kind of doors open. I think there's glass on either side. in this, and I think it's sort of vaguely like oval shaped.
Looks just like the tram at Newark International.
Yeah, it is the SkyTrain.
So this will take us to the central column, which we will then use to navigate into the kind of Burl Basilica area, right? That is our plan of attack.
Yes.
Yeah, let's do it. Hop in.
Tossing the cigarette on the ground, stomping out the butt before stepping into this little tram.
God, they always show up right as you're lighting a cigarette. It's crazy.
Dr. Forstall seems to be in control here. If it seems like we're not under immediate attack, I think Argo is happy to get on this train and ride that into the heart of danger.
Same.
You can make your way to this car that sort of appeared here in front of you. I think inside there's I don't think it's like a subway car where there's like benches, but there's standing room. I think towards the front there is like kind of a smaller interface in a similar fashion. This car has one smaller, probably like fist size, kind of smooth stone kind of orb, maybe like hovering over control here. Probably similar to like the front of a train car, right? Like you can push it forward or back. And your plan is to take this to the terminus at the other end, in the central spire, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
As we are moving this, are these bird things flying around and flocking towards it? Or what is I just want to know where they are. Brocco wants to keep an eye on those.
Yeah, good question.
I imagine they're just
if it's duck
peacefully
season, right?
soaring next to us.
Mm-hmm.
I think,
harmoniously.
If Dr. Forstall's like at the front, starting to manipulate this thing, kind of push the car forward. I think as that is happening, Argo might kind of move to the back with Brocco. Obviously not out of earshot, but like the doctor's focusing, on attuning to this thing again and moving us forward, right? As the car is starting to go down the cable. And I think Argo would approach Brocco at the back, right? Like looking out, like we're both eyes tracking to, kind of spot if any of these flocks do approach. Argo's kind of coming up to Brocco, trying to kind of pull him to the side a moment here. I think looking up, obviously at him, right? Like the size difference. I think Argo is like tall but very, very skinny. That tallness is still just dwarfed by the bulk of Brocco, right? But I think not a whisper, but like a quiet voice as we're looking out. What do you believe in, Brocco? I know why I'm here. I think it's rather obvious why Dr. Forstall is here, and glancing back at her, like manipulating this ancient, this paradigm-changing technological discovery, right?
Like Steamboat Willie on the front, whistling and...
Exactly, yeah. So I know why Dr. Forstall is here. I want to know what reward they dangled over your head to convince you to come here.
We get like like thought bubbles with just like a thought bubble in it.
The reward was getting to come face to face with something that might actually be able to stop me. You've been doing this long enough. It gets real boring. So I got the chance to have something thrown at me that maybe might prove to be a bit of a challenge. And I'm here looking at Dr. Forstall as they are like locked into controlling this with their mind. To do what has to be done if anyone gets too lost in the mission. We don't want the ship doing any more controlling of us than it needs to be.
Let me be clear, Brocco. Dr. Forstall is the only person here with the ability to convey the meaning and significance of what we have discovered on this ship. It is our absolute priority to see that she makes it off at any cost. I think one last glance back at her and then back at Brocco. If there is a world where you and I make it off the ship and Dr. Forstall does not, I can guarantee you I will make the rest of whatever miserable life you have left a living hell. I will show you someone who can defeat you, Brocco. And then eyes on the sky and, walking back over to check on Dr. Forstall as we crane through the air.
I love that. Yeah.
This is fun. I'm having fun.
Eyes
Not
rolling
paying
backwards in
attention
your
to
head.
it.
Yeah. I'm really enjoying this. You know what? I'm good at this. And you are, I think, kind of pushing on, right? Like, and as this kind of funicular cable car trundles across this gulf, I think you are probably looking at, I don't know that there's like a top speed here, unless you really were trying to pull something off. Crossing this distance, it's probably going to take maybe 15 minutes or something to cross this expanse. And, you mentioned this a moment ago. I think that as you look out here, there's probably double doors, right, on the long side of this car that I think are somewhat open. Like maybe they don't even close necessarily once you're inside, like a helicopter fuselage. And as you're looking outwards, the size and scope of this chasm you're crossing is probably a bit startling, right? Like looking down, you'd for sure have vertigo, right? But I think even more disorienting is that you're looking at almost like seeing a city from the air everywhere you look, right? Like you are kind of moving through this dense, multi-sided cityscape, kind of encompassing your entire field of view. And you're right. These, I think, flocks, they're multiples, right? Crossing this distance. They look like birds in migration. I think they're in like heats of these big groups. It's hard to tell where kind of they start and stop. I think they vary a bit in, size and shape. Some are, almost like multiple wings on a single body. Others are smaller and dense. But they are
what color are they?
They're this kind of like cesium-gold copper
Beautiful.
color. But, they sheen, I think, in the kind of ambient starlight of the interior and almost like a kind of verdigris, right? Like the bronze color that you see when it's oxidized. They kind of gleam, I think, at intermittent points as the starlight falls just right. But, they are actively surveying. You are kind of exposed here as you, I think, trundle along. What are you looking for anything? Like I was going to say, if you're kind of taking a defensive position here, I'm probably going to have you roll to kind of assess something. Because I think one of these flocks is sort of making its way. It's a matter of time, right, before one of these will come close. And I think that's kind of what we're starting to see as you near this central column. You're also moving closer to the basilica.
Okay. Do we know, or can we ask Dr. Forstall, do we know where this is going to land us? Like, is there a very clear, that is the end of the line for the path that this object is taking us? Because if that's a thing, Braga wants to make sure that he has taken every point of what could be entrance or intrusion, or so that when we land, it is something he has already considered. Does that, you know what I mean? Like, are there tunnels that are coming in? Is there going to be cover for us to get under right as we get off?
And I think at this point, you're maybe crossing the Rubicon, right? Like you're like kind of halfway over this chasm, maybe at the deepest points of the valley, for lack of a better term, below. And I think you can probably see out in the distance that you are probably getting the first glances at what you're arriving into. And I think that there is sort of a subtle shift in the gravity here. Like even maybe for a moment you feel a bit lighter, maybe feel a tug more towards the center. We're thinking cosmic, we're in a weird space here, right? So like the gravity's kind of shifting. You're still kind of standing upright. And I would say in lieu of like taking a roll, you can kind of squint and make out, that there is a similar terminal on the other side where there's like another gate where this would presumably dock. I think this column that runs kind of fore to aft down the middle of the Aeonian is a little more in view here. I think it's like starting to kind of take up more of the horizon. And previously, Argo had surveyed this column where it met the burl. That is kind of where you are heading, where the burl kind of meets this column. Does that make sense?
Am I going to have to make a helm roll?
Yeah, because I think as you get closer, Argo had surveyed this. This central column, I think, has these kind of panels that are really large and transparent at points, right? And if this was at one point some kind of almost like a sort of science fantasy like Axelrod, right? Like this is the cam, kind of runs through this sort of engine, like turning whatever here. The transparency now shows this cesium fluid at points, I think, suspended almost in like a helix sort of shape, suspended in sort of an anti-gravity. At other points, you can see the machinery beneath, even like pistons kind of moving back and forth. And as you get closer, so too do these flocks. And I think as you get closer there are 3 or 4 of these that are sort of taking passes around this like central spire. And I think 2 are kind of coming up around this spire. They're sort of coursing their way down towards you. I'm going to say you have a moment to act here. You can try and pass undetected. you can take a more, I guess, aggressive approach. But it seems like as you come closer to this terminal, the reason why they're not already on you is thanks to Dr. Forstall's bargain here, right? Like I would have clicked the alert clock had you not taken the devil's bargain and clicked forward the kind of overall stability. But there is kind of a coming moment where you are going to kind of intersect with one of these patrols.
I think I've got something here, unless you're eager to helm, Doctor.
Not particularly, no.
So I marked spy gear earlier, which I think is the many strange things in Argo's deep pockets. And I think I'm going to pull out like kind of I imagine there are a couple of these, and they're probably like pool ball sized, kind of like little greebly covered, mechanical spheres, right? And I think, Argo starts, I think they, almost like a Rubik's Cube, they can kind of like rotate, there's like a physical like mechanism I'm adjusting on these. But these are, I think, what Argo would colloquially call screamers. They are like little distraction engines.
Okay.
So I think that they will, when released, like it'll be noise, heat, and like electrical signals, right? It is like all the things that you need, especially in space, to attract something's attention.
Yeah, I like that.
And I think
What's
as
the
we are
plan?
kind of approaching the terminal, Argo is going to start like setting these and then just baseball pitching them out into the kind of yawning chasm behind us.
And so do these things like hover, or do they just kind of fall?
Oh, that's a good question. It's science fiction. Maybe it's a mix here, right? Like, that's why I'm, like, dialing some of these, right? Like, some of these are, like, suspending in the air and going off. Others are arcing and then starting to, they're kind of, like, going in multiple directions to create confusion and distraction as we come into the terminal.
Okay, so it's kind of like a chaff cloud, right? Like you're kind of creating stuff to kind of catch their attention and pull them away.
Yeah, and it's like, I think, like I said, like it is noise, right? Like, I think it's a mixture of, like, gunfire and, like, voices yelling. Maybe just, like, loud music also, right? Like a real chaos orb. And then also, like, flashing, emitting light. I think heat, right? There's, like, a flare element. And maybe some kind of, like, electronic, like, pulsing as well. It's like...
I like that. You have a role in mind? I guess like this is sort of maybe like a rig role for me.
I was thinking rig. I would also skulk, employ subtle misdirection or sleight of hand. Maybe this is not subtle enough. That was my only other. But otherwise, rig, I feel like it's probably right.
Yeah, I feel like rig is sort of like you're kind of setting a trap. So rig makes sense to me. You can...
What's the position and effect on this?
Yeah, I was going to say, there's probably not a lot of sound in here. So why don't we call that, I think, maybe a risky standard.
All right.
You can, of course, push yourself. I can give you a devil's bargain. You could set up kind of a group action or get an assist here.
Bracco, do you want to assist me here?
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about what assisting looks like.
What if you're the one throwing them?
Oh, okay.
You're big. You got arm, right? Like, if it's a rig roll, maybe I'm the one who's like setting them up, right?
Yeah, you're dropping the ones down, and I'm hurling the other ones as they.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sounds great.
So with your help, that puts me at 2.
And I take
one stress to assist.
Okay, just one.
I like 2 dice. That doesn't feel crazy to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me either. Go ahead and let her rip.
That's 2d6 risky standard.
That's a 3.
Ooh, 3.
And a 2.
And a 2. So you took your stress for that, right? And so, yeah, on a 3, you mentioned it's like music and like gunfire and shouting, right?
Yeah.
And I think like Bracco's like hurling these, you're maybe like working the interface on your controller to like set them off at strategic moments. And I think like as these things duck and flock near you, they seem to almost respond to the acoustic wave, right? Like, and I think kind of like that ferromagnetic fluid we talked about earlier, like you can see them kind of like reverberate, but just like your rounds that you shot towards that like meta material wolf before, they almost like, you can almost like see the vibration around it, like sand on an amp, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they almost like move around them somewhat undaunted here. But it is notable, and I think like in some sort of maybe dark mirror to your balletic, maneuvering around the detritus field on approach. They duck and weave and I think at points even kind of separate around these orbs, but they are coursing towards you. I think probably following the pattern of the throws. And as you approach now, the gate is pretty close, but all of a sudden, I think one of these almost like hopscotching from where they suspend in the atmosphere. And through this kind of open passage in the car, I think one of these flocks that like flushes through. And I think this is specifically for the two of you who set this roll up, Argo and Bracco. This kind of wave of these is starting to course through the car, like from one side to the other. You run the risk of being kind of caught up and thrown in this. Liquid and then crystallized. And I think it's like at that wing stroke or something where this material solidifies, it's sharp and jagged. And as they course through this, their avoidance is almost preternatural, but you are getting cut up by this, I think, as they like flow through the car, almost ignoring you. You are going to,
wait,
go ahead.
The car it's open air?
Yeah, imagine like a helicopter fuselage, right? Like the doors like split open on either side, and it's like they're streaming from one side to the other.
I thought we were
check you out.
enclosed. Okay.
Nobody closed the doors.
We also got to be throwing these things out somewhere, so.
Yeah.
I guess that's true. Okay. Well, at least I can shoot out if need to be.
And you are going to take the level 2 harm shredded here as these things tear through the cab. Imagine it's like a bottleneck, right? Like funneling through this and out the other side.
Are we both taking that harm?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're both kind of caught in this fricassee, unless you do something here.
I would like to try. I would like to resist, which I think
Good idea.
It looks like probably, like Argo spinning out of the way of the door, big coat flaring open. I think probably like we see the coat take some of the damage, right? Getting like sliced at its edges, right? One of these punches through.
Oh, totally. It's like Swiss cheese tearing through it. You're going to resist. I'll remind you here, there's a number of ways you can respond. You could use an item if you have an item. You can
I also
push yourself. You've got, what are you going to do?
I think this is when I think we decided it can be used multiple times. And if I'm wrong, we can talk about that. But the null field emitter.
Cool.
As he does this, they're starting to come to us and fly through. Click, mounts it down to the ground.
Cool.
All of a sudden, these birds are crashing into the window, or like water on a wax surface, spreading, so that it doesn't break Dr. Forstall's concentration, and it keeps us from getting shredded.
That's a great use of that. I will absolutely take that. And for the listening audience, this null field emitter was a asset you acquired at Providence Station. Yeah, that's sick as hell. I think with that, because we determined that was a fine quality null field emitter, I love that idea. This object, remind me of what it looks like. You mentioned you're putting it on the ground.
I think it kind of is like an eyeglasses case that fits in the pocket and slides down, but it has like a button, and when you push it, it clicks and kind of becomes like a tripod that can just be set on the ground.
Cool.
Visually, in my mind, it's kind of like the, the droidicas in Star Wars that can fire out.
Oh, okay, sure.
And we are encapsulated, but things are not able to...
You're in like the bubble shield. Yeah, okay, sick. Go ahead and mark that as used on your sheet. And I think like you plant this thing down, chunk, like it folds out, a handful of times as the sort of, or eyeglass case shape like opens up. Gotcha. And I think from beneath you, it spreads out and around. I think as you're in here, right, like you're almost like suspended. You feel lighter almost as this like thrumming outward force like pushes this bubble's edge out and around. Previously, we talked about this as being like maybe like a 15 feet, radius, which I think is enough to kind of cradle this car that you're in. And you can go ahead and downgrade that harm. We'll take it down to like tattered. I guess you can make that a level 1. Unless anybody else is pulling anything fancy. I think like that image on Argo's, like long coat is I think like punched through a couple of times here as you pull yourself into the corner of the vestibule. And you know what, actually, like this is a fine object, so maybe this will negate the damage altogether.
Okay.
I think that's more true to the rules. I believe we did say you spent 1 cred on it. It's a one-time use, but this is a great use of that. And I think you mentioned it like wax hitting cold water. And I think the minute this thing like erupts around you, you can hear it. I actually really like the Star Wars part because I can hear the like plunk, 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 plunk. Like it's this muted exterior, right? As I think these cesium-colored flocks of birds just start colliding with the outside of this, and it like washes over it, right? But you are protected within this bubble, and you're kind of able to push through here, unless anyone else has anything they'd like to do.
No, that's great.
And I think even you, Dr. Forstall, like I think you can feel, the car on its like connection to this suspensor line sways even a little bit at the force of this. I think like it would probably be sort of unearthly to hear this like rain on the outside of a igloo, or like on the outside of a greenhouse, not an igloo.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know what that sounds like.
Yeah, like rain
quiet.
on the outside of a greenhouse, right? Like this like tinkling sound. And you trundle along here to this gate, having successfully traversed the expanse. So as this thing docks, the scale of this burl is stretching out and upwards above you. I think standing close to it, immediately as you step off, you're alone here on the platform. But further up on this burl, as you look towards the ceiling of this interior, you can see that these holes that you identified in the burl earlier do have these sentinel phage kind of moving in and out. I think they almost look like an ant colony here. Like you can see them holding aloft pieces of the cenotaph as they're like moving them along the surface, coming in and out of these holes. And this basilica is off to the left side of you. I think this sort of copper gold, like accretion disc, where you're starting, before you could kind of see this taking shape as it was like magma cooling. But here I think now you can see that in hues of this gold and verdigris color of oxidized brass, it is almost like a palatial, almost like Versailles, right? Like there's like topiary shrub. There are kind of walkways, this sort of garden is, I think, dotted with these same statues on pedestals. From where you're standing anyway, some are vaguely humanoid, others I think are more geometric suprematism. As you step off onto this central spire, I think beneath your feet, the surface of the Aeonian differs on this column from what you've seen before, especially where it gets close to the burl, is almost like scar tissue. Like it is not clean and perfect. It is like pocked. I think it's like thicker and kind of like sinewy in areas, but it's stone, right? Like it's still solid, but it is changed here.
Just to clarify, we are moving not on through the interior of like the central column, but along its surface.
You are kind of like on the surface of this thing where this central column meets the edge of the burl.
In this garden below us, that seems like a trap. Everyone has said like things are not as they seem, and it seems like they like to emulate things that we are. It seems like they're trying to get us to go down there. And
think about this sort of like the Hagia Sophia, where this is like sort of like the grounds of a garden that you would find outside of a classical antiquity cathedral. Have any of you been in a Concordat homeworld?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think this would...
I have not.
So to the two of you that have, this would be somewhat obvious to you, right? Like as this is certainly mimicking what would be familiar in the opulent and ornate style of a cathedral world, right? In the fashion of what would be common for the Concordat. It's like the Hagia Sophia meets the Sagrada Familia, I think is the weird goopy cathedral that's perpetually under construction in Barcelona. It's like this organic, inorganic looking shape, but it's this reflection of something that would be familiar to you as a Concordat site of veneration, but is slightly different.
Eyes once more to Dr. Forstall.
Follow me. And then I start walking towards the destination, because I know where I'm going.
Are we
Yes,
going to
you do.
the burl, or are we going to the
So I would say,
basilica?
like, you have two options in front of you. One is to
Yes.
clamber your way across this burl. You would have to climb, I think, and you are probably going to have to contend with the sentinel phage that are crawling the exterior here. Or you could continue a bit further and step into this cesium-gold garden that is out front of the basilica.
How far is the cenotaph from us right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think like the edge of the burl, some stories above you, grows up and over the hull of the cenotaph. It is a climb. You certainly can go there, but it would take some effort, and You're kind of at a moment of calm here. The birds seem to be fairly occupied. You see that, the exterior of the cenotaph is sort of like a relief carving, but is very ornate, strange, and it is sort of moving with a lot of these sentinel phage as they're like dismantling portions of it and seemingly taking it to feed the basilica.
Well, yeah, Dr. Forstall, you got the map in your brain.
Yeah. Can I access that information, or do I need to make a sort of call?
I would say it depends on what you're asking. You know where you are. What are you asking? I guess is a better.
Which is the better way to go? I'm feeling
sure.
I'm feeling
give me an
like
attune roll.
I'm being an attune roll. Okay. What is the better? What's the better way to go? Which is safer? Which is quicker? Which is? I'm sure that one is safer and one is quicker, but one way is neither.
Okay.
I'm sure.
Yeah, give me an attune there. And actually, there's for sure a kiosk here as well.
Yeah.
And even as you kind of step towards it, I think that the kind of murmur at your temples stirs, and you got a 3.
And I failed the roll, so.
Oh, absolutely. Step into the garden. The quickest path to absolution is right before you. And I think it calls you to the basilica. I think the phrase that echoes in your head is that you are so close now.
All right. Well, I think I'm going to turn to my colleagues. I'm going to say, well, clearly there's something calling it. It wants us real bad to go through the garden into the basilica, which makes me think that there's a potential danger. Unknown danger compared to scrambling on the side of this burl, perhaps falling, perhaps being attacked by sentinel phages, that kind of danger. So what do you think? We'll flip a coin at this point.
So Dr. Forstall isn't in a hypnotized thing where it's we have
once for a moment.
But you have broken out of that. So
No. Well, yeah, exactly. I think that's what I'm getting. But when I'm pulled out and pulled away, I'm able to thoughtfully and logically come to that conclusion.
Okay. Yeah, you're not under a spell or anything, but I think when you ask it which way to go, this voice that you've heard before would say, the basilica is so close now. You're so close to it.
Well,
not follow the candy
Mr.
trail.
Cattell, your thoughts?
Is that where the command hub is?
It's through one of these ways.
Why disappoint?
Yeah, we should heed the call, I believe.
This is probably the moment camera gets a sight of Argo reaching into his jacket and touching something. The camera remembers, right? We saw this is the pocket where Argo has deposited the sort of destructive device given to him by the procurator, Bereska Perneb, back on the installation before we set out on this mission, right? This sort of fundamental bomb. Just a little security blanket there. I think let's, even if it's a trap, climbing up that burl, avoiding the sentinel phages, it's a difficult proposition.
You failed that roll. I'm going to tick the stability clock. And in part with that, I think even as you're kind of discussing here, this garden, these palatial grounds almost extend like water spilled on a countertop. It's almost like rolling towards you. And I think in the path of where this rolls, there are these verdigris colored stepping stones that I think even kind of solidify and rise up out of the kind of water's edge, so to speak.
Into the garden then.
I mean, I think the other end of this, you can see, is still coursing with these flocks. The basilica here now, I think, is in, view. And this garden, I think, is still growing. This palatial garden continues to kind of grow its outer edges, somewhere between, spilling water on a countertop and the edges of an amoeba's arm. And one of these extensions forks its way out towards you, meandering towards where you're standing. And these verdigris bronze-colored stepping stones kind of emerge. You can certainly enter. And I think, is that what you're going to do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So as you make your way in here, they give a little bit as you step. Not like it's going to fall in, but you sink in a little bit, leaving, I think, boot prints behind, right? And as you, I think, make your way down this path, you enter this distorted Versailles, right? There's kind of topiary shrub in this like cesium-gold, but I would say to a very high degree of detail. Like you can see the individual leaves of bushes and blades of grass as you get closer. And, you eventually find your way to this kind of path that is dotted with statues. And as you kind of move down this path, the three of you, these statues, I think some look familiar, some not so much. But I think that as you get closer, they turn to you as the echo had before, as you're walking through, and I think are kind of speaking at the same time. They kind of start saying the same thing, right? Like you heard before from the same bust. You're closer now to the truth. And I think the refrain continues,
I'm sure we are. How close to the truth we are. Don't you feel it, my good comrades, how close we are to the truth now?
The truth.
Very skeptical eye cast towards Dr. Forstall.
Is Dr. Forstall like, play along with it? Is that like?
No, I think she's more like, okay, well, what fresh hell do these things have? Okay, yeah, like, we get it. You're evil or whatever. I don't know. Like,
I just didn't know if you were playing dumb to try to trick them into thinking like, ooh, they're unaware of what we're doing.
I mean, I could be doing a little bit of that too.
As you move through this garden, at a point, it's almost like hard to tell this sort of shift here from garden to it's almost like you're walking in a still pool, right, of this cesium, like almost like the water's deepened beneath the surface. But you're on these stepping stones, and I think there are movement in the surface of the water, right? Like there are these disturbances, like almost like a serpent cresting and falling as you're walking along. Nothing has like tried to trip you or stop you, but they're moving around you. And I think this pool stretches out in front of you where you can now see the edges of these trees and hedges and things out further. And you are now coming to the basilica. Its 7 spires reach tall and high above you. And as you get closer, I think you would realize that the environment itself is shaping it as you get closer, right? And so these kind of stepping stones lift up, and I think all of a sudden these serpents raise up from this pool and freeze, right, as they create almost like an amphitheater backdrop. And suddenly in front of this pool, these raise up. There is, as you've seen before, like this rising, shape takes form from this pool. But this time it fills your vision. And this still pool of water, I think, rises in front of you, a throne of stepped dais, and a procession all of a sudden reveals itself in front of you. Like it just rises, and you can see that there are rows of, I would say, Concordat legionaries in this monotone cesium-gold. They're standing kind of at attention, spears in hand. And atop this throne, and kind of one leg up on an arm, sitting reclined,
like a
barbarian
yaw.
king, yes, is, the completed form of this bust of a figure you had seen before. And there is this paladin here, very stately. And, Argo and Bracco, you've been to a Concordat cathedral world. This would be befitting of the Hierophant himself. And as you approach, I'll turn it over to you. Yeah, you walk into this scene. Do you have anything you want to say? Otherwise, I'm
I think I'm gonna walk up to this. What are we calling this? This paladin?
Yeah, it's a paladin. It's a paladin. Pollux referred to him as a heretic, an apostate.
The doctor walks up, and it's just like, let's get to the chase here. Okay, here he is, the great paladin, the great heretic. We've walked down your primrose path. We've made it here, all for your glory. What do you want?
And I think he stands abruptly, and it immediately strikes you his size dwarfs you. And I think it hits you like a pressure wave as a voice bellows, "Kneel." Dr. Forstall, you have communed with this. Your body lurches to the ground as if you are pulled into a kneeling position as the splendor overwhelms.